Welcome back to Rich Dad StockCast. I'm your host, Denney, and today's episode is a unique one. A lot of people have read Rich Dad Poor Dad. They've heard the concepts, assets versus liabilities, cash flow, financial education, but very few have had the opportunity to learn directly from Robert and Kim Kiyosaki in real-world situations. So today, Andy Tanner is going to share what he learned from working alongside them, lessons about wealth that goes beyond just the books. And before we get into the heart of our conversation, go to stockcastbonus.com, grab your free investing tools. If you want to move from theory to real application, that's where you start. Andy Tanner, welcome back, sir.
Oh, we never really spend any time telling me what the podcast is going to be about until, right when we do this. And I just, I love the episodes where I get to tell stories about Robert Kiyosaki and Kim Kiyosaki and even the other people that have, been around that organization for so long, because first of all, there's so many stories to tell. One episode would never do it. So we could have many episodes with this theme. And then second of all, the information has been life-changing for me. So it's really valuable for the listener. But from a personal standpoint, it also gives me the opportunity to pay tribute and give credit for the blessings and gratitude for the blessings of my life by acknowledging where so much of what I perpetuate, comes from Robert and even his mentors and his rich dad, right? And the mentors he's had. So this will be enjoyable, I think, for everybody, and I sure appreciate it. So thank you for the opportunity.
I always love hearing these stories. I feel like I'm the hearing bedtime
If
stuff.
I repeat one, I don't remember what I've told them I haven't. So if I repeat one, we'll forgive, because it brings things to top of mind. And if so, then change the subject. Say I need another story.
Fair enough.
But I'll
fair
do
enough.
my best. Yeah.
Speaking of perpetuating education, continuing to pass down along what you've learned, stockcastbonus.com. There's some great resources in there. I know they're always being updated. Can you tell our listeners that are new what's in stockcastbonus.com?
We change it from time to time. Right now, as of this recording, if you're listening to it recently, there's a great ebook, and there's actually resources inside the ebook. We have calculators and links to special things on our site that really help people build a wealth blueprint. And it's a real nice transition. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the things I try to do is say what action items I'm going to take, because it's very easy to enjoy the edutainment, is what we call it, right? Being entertained by learning. But it's that implementation that really separates the successful from the unsuccessful. So the calculators and the tools and the continuity of having teachers in your life with those resources that are much broader than what we can share on the podcast. Very, very valuable. And best of all, like the podcast, it's a resource that's no charge. So it's got your name on it. Go claim yours at stockcastbonus.com. So there's my pitch. There you go.
Very good. Very good. Love that. Now, let's get back to our topic of conversation. That's the lessons learned from Robert and Kim Kiyosaki. And there's a ton of them there, and they always amaze me. And if I can add a little personal context, Andy and I have known each other for 2 decades plus.
Unbelievable. You haven't aged, and I have.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think we're both aging along with each other.
On my side of this, we met about 35 pounds ago.
That's hilarious.
20 years and 30 pounds. So there you go.
Well, I probably have another 32. So we've grown a full adult between both of us. I'm
there
sure.
We go.
But I remember traveling, and this was early in my career, and this was before you knew Robert and Kim Kiyosaki. And I remember you quoting from Rich Dad Poor Dad.
All the time.
It's like it was the Bible, like passage 3, verse 2. Like Robert said this, and I thought. And I loved the book as well. And that was before I knew anything about this. And, then fast forward a few years later, you have this connection with him. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Talk about the law of attraction or the universe or whatever it might be. But my question leading up to this, what have you learned? What stood out from getting to know Robert and Kim Kiyosaki? We have the books, we've learned from the books, but what's something that you've noticed about Robert and Kim Kiyosaki that the books don't tell?
Well, boy, that's a long list. And if I could just back up a little bit to what you said, you said, wow, that was kind of surprising that, Andy read this book and would share it and teach it in the lectures and speeches I used to give when I would travel back in the old day. No one was more surprised than me that, all of a sudden, I just remember my first trip with those guys, on that team was, it was to Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand were the 4 stops. And I wasn't able to make the New Zealand the last stop, but the other 3 I made. And it was my first trip to any of those countries. And I remember the first stop in Malaysia, the size of that stage. I mean, it was like, it's the closest I'll ever get to being in a band with Bon Jovi or something, man. It was unbelievable. Lights and it was surreal because I thought, wait a minute, it wasn't too long ago that my wife and I were, had a habit of before we go to bed at night, we'd read a chapter of Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'd read a paragraph, she'd read a paragraph out loud. We both had a copy. And it was a little bit of imposter syndrome because I'm like, well, I understand, a good amount of investing. I'm a decent teacher, but this is ridiculous. So that was the beginning of a 14-year run. And as my Robert and Kim, very gracious, they saw as my kids started to get older, I want to spend more time at home and travel less. But, we still support 100%. We do the podcast. And, I saw Robert up in Park City. It's just a blessing. So no one was more surprised than me because I'm just like any other of the 93 million readers that have read that thing or however many there are, just a just a husband and a father wanting a better life through assets and passive income rather than active income. And so I've always kept my feet pretty planted on the ground in that, everyone here, we're all the same. And we're all just plugging away and taking our swings at life and doing what we can. So, but marvelous experience, no one more surprised than me. Now, with that long-winded confession of imposter syndrome back in the day, Robert and Kim, very different, like my wife and I, I could see where that business relationship was very beneficial both ways. Robert is a Marine. He is team. He is code. He is honor. He is never leave, a man behind. Support your teammate. He's very much a team guy. And Robert is big picture. Like me, there are not a lot of patience for details. I remember the reprimand I think he gave me more than anything else as a mentor, and as a coach, where he'd say, kick my butt as a teacher anyway, he says, Andy, you just go too small all the time. You got to stay big picture. And as a guy who's not a detail guy by nature, I mean, he's really big picture, right? He never goes small. Kim understands the devils are in the details, and she can go through a real estate deal and see every little freaking tiny, I mean, she's just amazing that way. Very, very effervescent, ray of sunshine, smiles all the time. Robert and I would like to go fight people. Actually, I'm a little different. I'm probably more of a Coast Guard guy. He's more of a Marine guy. So I'd probably rather save someone than shoot him. But, yeah, just wonderful mentors. And the thing that they both would share that's common to them, and particularly Robert, an absolute insatiable, an inability to be satisfied with education. He studies like no one I've ever seen. And you kind of think, hey, I've got the best book in the world. Like I'm the number one guy in the world as far as personal finance. I mean, there's no book that's more widely read, respected, quoted, referred to. Longevity still sells today. You'd think that a guy like that would say, yeah, I know everything. Not true. He devours books, and he does encore reading of chapters. And he doesn't like the Kindle. He'll get the physical book and he has notes in it and post-its and everything, and he just destroys them. I mean, they're just used. It looks like a car that needs new tires, and needs a new paint job by the time he's done with it. And he has a rule in learning that when we study, we never bring our own opinions into it and insert, let me give you my take on this. I'll tell you what I think about this. That's absolutely outlawed. When you study with him, the words are, it's like Bootcamp. There's a very particular way you do things. There's a standard operating procedure. And that procedure is what the author said was, and you quote what the author said. And we try to figure out what the author is communicating rather than inserting our own opinions, because we had those already. Now, after it's over, if we want to go out the door and implement it, however, but in that study, we work very, very hard to say, what did he say or she? And it's a style of study that's different than school, because school is kind of like minimums to get the grade. Like, okay, what do I need? What do I need to know and what do I not? What should I pay attention to get the test done? This is not that. This is actually like, what is the learning here? It's to learn, not to get a grade. And it's, wow, it's really an interesting way of studying. And on my team at the Cashflow Academy, we've copied that, and it's been to our benefit. So learning how to learn as a teacher, people see him as a teacher. What they probably don't see is the incredible dedication as a student to learn every day. So that's something I think that wouldn't be maybe necessarily appreciated from the outside looking in, because, well, he's a great teacher. Well, he's every bit. And I was much more of a student on that team. Those guys were all smart. I was definitely the least of the people associated with that organization. Those guys are brilliant, man. Brilliant.
Well, I think it goes back. I think it goes back to that saying: if you're the dumbest person in the room, then you're in the right room.
Oh, I qualified there.
Yeah,
I qualified there. Yeah, still do.
Now, speaking of challenges, Robert challenging you or Kim challenging you as well. What's a belief about money that you may not have fully understood at the moment, and they challenged you to think differently?
Debt, for sure. Early on, I did not. I understood options before I met Robert. I understood how to get cash flows in the stock market before I met Robert. That's why he wanted me to, be around to share what I thought I knew. What I did not grasp nearly to the degree that after staying with him was the idea of debt, what money is, and monetary policy in a big picture, and how that affects the idea that and I saw it immediately when he began teaching. I realized that, for example, real estate, you could look at it two sides of a coin. You could say, well, the real estate is what it is. It's a house. It's providing a service. You can rent this house. You get square footage. Improve the house, and you focus on the house or the apartment complex or the commercial shopping center, the golf course, or whatever it is you own. And it's very easy to think real estate and think about the real estate. But bigger than the real estate is, on the asset side of the balance sheet, is the liability of debt and the utility of debt. This is where Robert, even though he's a Marine, he's probably a little bit nicer to people like Ramsey, Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman. I'm not. I don't know them. I'm sure they're nice people, but when I hear him talk, I just think, I thought I was a simpleton, but my gosh, and I hate to say that. I shouldn't. That's a over that's maybe overboard, but the idea that he would not see debt through the lens of utility and almost see it through a lens of like some type of morality is ludicrous. If you look at fire, you can make an argument that you shouldn't play with matches and that you'll get burned. If you play with fire, you'll eventually get burned, right? You play with fire, you're going to get burned, and wag your finger as if it's a sinful idea to light a match. But if you're a Boy Scout, and I'm an overgrown Boy Scout, an Eagle Scout, I'm still that guy that, that maybe my moral compass is just so instilled that I'm an overgrown Boy Scout. But that said, it's about being prepared. And we learned firecraft. We saw fire in terms of its utility as opposed to a danger or not dangerous. He just sees debt as dangerous and bad and awful and everything about it's bad. No, one of the problems with pensions is that it doesn't use the balance sheet. It's only an income statement issue. You get a pension check and you spend it, income and expense. It ignores and it gives no utility to the asset column or the liability column. The liability column doesn't exist as a naughty list for Santa Claus to look at all the liabilities you have. The liability column exists as a tool, as part of a cash flow pattern where cash flow can enter a financial statement via the liability column, which is a much better way to have money enter that system, if done properly, than through a working for income. You could go to a job and have money enter into the income column through the job, or you can have, if you look at a real financial statement, you have something called a statement of cash flows. And there's 3 cash flows patterns. There's operational income, where money enters the system through work and through providing value. You walk into a business, you got a great operation running here, doing lots of work, making lots of money. That's one way. Another way to have money income to the system is through investment. You sell a property, and all of a sudden the capital gain you made enters the system. It's now cash. The bank account grows. But you can also borrow money to bring money into a system, which is the fastest and easiest way to bring money into a system. So if a person does that intelligently, the utility of debt is huge. And as far as you talk about the big lesson, the big epiphany was this: I don't know where Apple will be. The iPhone with AI could be an obsolete technology, where instead you have a robotic device that does much, much more for you. Apps, I think, are toast. I think you'll have one thing that can do all of that. There's nothing on any of those apps that AI couldn't do right now. It could tell you what the weather was. It could tell you, the GPS. I mean, there's not an app there that AI couldn't write. And so, that obsolescence risk is a big deal. So I don't know where Apple will be or how they'll innovate or whether they'll be a leader or be supplanted. I don't know. But I do know this: dollar's going to lose value. That's a prediction I can make. And so if I'm going to short the US dollar, Warren Buffett said it, there's probably no better way, at least he said it's a great way, to short the US dollar is to borrow that money that is losing value and turn it into an asset that's gaining value. Now, why a guy like Dave Ramsey can't fathom that because of some moral dogmatic thinking is like, if I can take something that's losing value and trade it for something that's going to increase in value, over time, when I repay that, I'm repaying with dollars that are worth less. And to me, that's alchemy, man. That is that's how he made his fortunes, through debt. It's not the real estate. The real estate's just the mechanism. It's the concept of the devaluation of that dollar that we can rely on and bet on based on the fiscal irresponsibility of our country. I mean, we have so much money tied to what we call income security. We're paying for people's health care and pensions and Social Security, all that income security and all those programs. We're so deep in those, and now we have to pay interest on those debts, that it's almost like terminal. it's almost a terminal situation where it's not something we can come back from. So we can bet on money printing. We can bank on that. And so since that's such a great prediction that I can make, unlike predicting a stock, being short the dollar and using real estate to do that, to me, is just total sense. And it escapes some of the gurus that just don't appreciate the utility of debt. Fire can keep you warm. It can light your way. It can fend off the bear. It can cook your food. It can save your life. And it can take your life. It's the wisdom, discipline, and knowledge of utility. Firecraft. We learn how to start a fire. We didn't play with matches. We learned how to make it with flint and steel and other mechanisms. So I look at, so that idea that debt is about utility and it's not bad, major lesson from Robert Kiyosaki for me. Major. I mean, huge.
That is that is huge. I think we need to create some type of lesson called Debtcraft instead of Firecraft. We'll call it Debtcraft. What can we do?
Utility.
With it?
Yeah.
That's it.
And if your liability column is empty, you're not using it. And if your liability column has bad debt in it, you're playing with matches. If it has good debt in it, you've mastered the fire. You've mastered the flame. You've harnessed the power. Mankind changed when we figured out how to manufacture the fire. And probably nothing was more important until the wheel, and then nothing was more important until the printing press. It is the ability to use debt is a watershed moment for an investor when they learn how to do that. Because how fast can you borrow? There's a limit to your production capability of operational income. There is not a limit, really, to the frequency and volume of debt a person can accumulate when they know how to raise capital. So it is truly worth more than just an episode in of itself. But if you want to talk about major lessons, major lessons.
That's huge. All right, let's do a quick break. These are the kind of insights that you don't really get from reading, that you get them from being in the room. So when we come back, Andy's going to share how these lessons have shaped his investing philosophy, how you can start applying them today. And don't forget, go to stockcastbonus.com, download your free resources. This is where knowledge becomes action. So stick around. We'll be right back.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
Welcome back to Rich Dad StockCast. Now, Andy, let's talk application. How did these lessons from Robert and Kim actually shape the way that you invest and teach today?
Mostly pain. This is something that I've observed in my own journey that I often teach and share in my writings is, and Blair Singer is a huge part of this thought process and what spurred this thinking in my head. One of the things that Robert Kiyosaki, Kim Kiyosaki, all those guys, Kenny, Garrett, Josh, Lisa, all of them, Tom, all of them is they're not only insatiable learners, but that learning is part of a process of personal development. And so Warren Buffett talks about this as well, that as important as your knowledge, for example, would be your investor temperament, how you approach things contextually. What is the context of your temperament? Are you able to temper, great word, are you able to temper things like fear, greed, all of the foibles that were inherited by our primal nature, right? The limbic system in our head that, makes us emotional and crazy. And, mine's overactive. I'm the most emotional guy. It's to my detriment much of the time, sometimes to my benefit when I'm dealing with people. I'm an empath. But a lot of times it's to my detriment. So, being in that group, and implementing things in my own life, how did I implement in my own life? It put all my weaknesses on display, which is a tough pill to swallow when you realize that the locus of control is mostly internal. Yeah, there's, stuff that happens externally you got to deal with, but the weight of realizing that, hey, if it is to be, it's up to me. And if I'm not successful, I can only look in the mirror. That's a very capitalistic view. Socialists think that it's the environment that, we're either you're either, it's like the proletariat, it's the victim idea that, well, it's unfair and it should be fair. And it's the environment that's making me the way I am. Capitalists say, no, I can get up in the morning and I have freedom to do whatever I want to do, despite any victimhood I might endure. So when I look at my own flaws, and I was writing a book on wartime investing, and one of the things I thought of is, Michelangelo, where it is probably apocryphal, but he was rumored to have said that, hey, I just saw the statue of the angel in the marble, and I just cut away what wasn't the angel. And in the same way of personal development, part of the process is educe. First education lesson Robert ever gave me personally was, what does education mean? To draw it out. It's not to pack in the knowledge and pound the knowledge. It's to bring that. It's like we're going to bring that inner investor out. We're going to draw that person out by cutting away the marble that's getting in the way. Things like inconsistency, get it out. Greed, get it out. Fear, get it out, right? All ignorance, get it out. When you take away the things that inhibit success, it's like chipping away that marble that allows the investor to emerge. And so that when you talk about, Andy, how have you applied that stuff? That's a process of it's a sadistic process because it's a pain that you can enjoy. It's crazy because you get addicted to getting better. It's like James Clear, I believe, Atomic Habits, 1% better every day. What am I going to chip away at? And so, one of the standards in that team is if you didn't want to study, you didn't want to get better, and you didn't want to fight that fight every day, no one wanted to be around you. And so when your weaknesses are on display as a team and everyone's trying to work on themselves constantly, it's not a pain-free process. It's just not. And so when it comes to implementation, it's a beautiful pain. It's like that guy. It's like that guy that knows how to do assisted stretching. He's got your hamstring just maxed out. You're like, oh, this is the worst feeling, and yet it's so good at the same time. And so most people don't like pain, and they don't like the struggle. They want to see school as something they get finished with. We don't finish school. So working on our temperament, personal development, that's been that's like when it comes to what it's like to implement that stuff in your life, that's what it is. It's joyful pain.
Joyful pain.
Blood, sweat, and tears in a great way. Like in a basketball team, you bleed together, right? You're out there battling together and you bond together, and you look back at those practices that were very trying times on the practice floor, and they were the refiner's fire, right? And some people don't want to go in the refiner's fire, and some of us can't leave it, because we want to be refined.
Indeed. Now, shifting gears here, let's talk about cash flow. Cash flow being so important. How did they influence your focus on cash flow? Like, why is income more important than accumulation?
Well, I learned that pretty early with the cash flow game. I mean, people criticized Robert for, people don't know this. The book Rich Dad Poor Dad started out as a brochure for the cash flow game. So, people there's going to be guys like, it's not the critic who counts, right? But there's people that give Rich Dad Poor Dad 1 star. Well, I would just say if the entire world around you is giving it 5 stars and you're the guy that gives it 1 star, does that say more about the book or more about you? And so, you got these 1-star guys saying, well, all that is, all he does is try to, sell his cash flow game in that book. Well, no, that's not all he does, but he does mention it and say, hey, you should get this. So we did. And, my sons, I'll boast on them a bit. They grew up with that thing. It's part of their body. It's part of their being. And they have bank accounts that I think rival most high school students, right? I mean, they would not just rival them. I would say they're far in the upper part of the top quartile of where they're at in terms of their nest egg. I look at my son who's going to be a senior next year. He could actually, I think, just take that money now and just park it traditionally and just let the compounding happen, not touch it. And his millionaireship would be insured, I think, with enough time. Now he's not going to park it. He's going to do it. But the cash flow game that Robert introduces in Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's the name of the game. It's cash flow. And I understood how to get cash flow out of stocks before I met Robert. That's kind of, again, why he said, hey, that, and I didn't like how 401ks operated. So that's kind of where we clicked. My book in the Rich Dad series was Stock Market Cash Flow. Today and every day we do the podcast, I talk about how I'm not going to sell my stocks because they go up. Just because the price tag of the goose that lays the golden eggs goes up, you don't want to sell that goose because you lose the golden eggs that are perpetually going to make you and your kids and your children's children wealthy with assets that produce cash flow. So that's not a hard concept, actually. But it is dominant. I mean, Kim's moniker is the queen of cash flow, right? She says, I'm the queen of cash flow. That's what I care about. Very passionate about it. And cash flow allows us to do what's called reinvestment. It's very different. When you think about compounding, some people think compounding is about rate of return, and that's an element to that. But if you buy a stock at 50 and it goes to 100 and you sell the stock, well, now you got to find another stock at 50 to keep churning and flipping and churning and flipping. It's a better way to take the cash flow from that stock and buy more stocks and increase the number of assets, not just the value of the aggregate value, but the actual number of machines that are producing cash flow. So the idea of reinvestment via cash flow is much easier and, in my opinion, much smarter. And I think it lends itself to the meaning of the word compounding better than buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high, and trying to figure it out. You know, let's say gold hits 5,000 ounce. Okay, you sell your gold. Now what are you going to do? You got to go find something else that you think is going to grow. And so when guys on the phone call me up, try to sell me more gold coins, I said, I got enough gold. I need something that cash flows, that will produce, that'll have babies. You know, I need a rabbit to have some more babies, and you know, let those rabbit have babies and those rabbit have babies. We want to multiply our assets, not just see an increase in value. So yeah, cash flow is key. It's the name of the game. Literally, the name of the game is called cash flow. It is the deal, and we prioritize that as we learn. The other thing that's important about cash flow is when you learn to read the three parts of a financial statement: income, expense, asset, liability, and statement of cash flows. Those three statements, the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of cash flows, we identify patterns of different lifestyles, different ways to run a business or a country or a university or whatever the entity is. And you can get the lighting and the lens, when you look at the lens through understanding how cash flows, because it is currency, it is moving. Don't think of it as a pile of cash. Think of it as movement, as cash moves in and out of a financial statement. It gives tremendous insight on the integrity and quality and the moat, to use a Buffett phrase, the moat, that it's a part of that moat that we consider. You know, how healthy is this cash flow pattern, and how sustainable is that cash flow pattern? How likely is that cash flow pattern to either maintain or even improve? So it is a wonderful thing to study, and a wonderful thing to be able to talk about and feel like you're somewhat versed in, because it's a huge part of investing, cash flow investing rather than capital gain investing.
There we go. Well said. Now, final question here. All these lessons, you know, great financial education that we've learned through the books. Where should someone go to start learning the right way? What's the first step someone should take this week to start their education?
I don't know that it's which step. It's that you take a step. Any step. You know, it's like I heard a wonderful pastor one time he was speaking about service, and he said this: just go in any direction. and you'll find someone you can help. Go in any direction, up, down, forward, backward, in 3 dimensions. There's an infinite way you could reach out in any direction, and it would be a good place to find someone you could lift and help. And I think it's the same way here. What's the first step? Okay, go read or reread Rich Dad Poor Dad. Do something. Go order the cash flow game we mentioned and begin playing it with your family. Go to StockCastBonus.com. Get the free stuff there if you want to be a little bit more, if you want to move from the simulation learning to actual practice learning by doing the real thing. But do something. Right now, the easiest one, as we always say, is go to StockCastBonus.com. It's really easy to do. And, frankly, if a person chooses not to do that, that really speaks volumes, right? Because that's pretty easy to do, right? That's a pretty easy first step. No cost, it's about as effortless as you get. And yet there are people that just believe that they shouldn't even have to do anything, that society should just take care of everybody. And we should hold hands, sing whatever and all that. No, if it is to be, it's up to me. And, if you want it to be true, it'll be up to you. So anything, just take some action, especially in a world where passive content is such a dopamine hit. So many podcasts like this one that are really fun to listen to if you're interested in this stuff. And you think, great, I'll listen to the next one tomorrow and get the same dopamine hit. But it's not nearly as good as the cash when it comes. When you get money coming into that system, man, that's a lot more exciting and a lot more adrenaline, man, and excitement when the cash is not just theoretical, when you're doing something real. And there's a feeling of satisfaction when you enter and engage that process. So what's the first step? Anything, but start doing stuff instead of observing stuff. There's the learning and the doing. Any doing is going to be good. And if you make another great first step is maybe go out and make a few mistakes, because those are incredible teachers. Those mistakes are. And in finance, none of them are fatal. And so you can't be harmed physically at all with losing a little money or making a little mistake here, even a big one. It's not like you're gonna lose your life. It's you have a chance to start over. And America's built for that. That's why you have bankruptcy laws. It's built for failure. A guy fails, you say, well, okay, try again. And people do it all the time. I've never had to declare it, but if I had to, well, okay, let's start again. It's like Rocky. It doesn't matter how many times you get hit, it's how many times you can get hit and come back. So there you go. Do anything. Awesome. Make a mistake. Buy Rich Dad Poor Dad. Go buy the cash flow game. Go to StockCastBonus.com. Go open a paper trade account. Start trading stock. Join our mentor club, and we'll walk you through it. Buy an ounce of silver just so you have an asset, and now you're not have an empty asset column, right? Anything, it could be a step in the right direction. Just do something.
There we go. Thank you, Andy Tanner, for these insights. Listener, the difference between reading about wealth and building wealth often comes down to what we just talked about, and that's just application, applying yourself, doing something. And today, Andy gave us a good look at what that actually looks like, what it looks like behind the scenes of working with Robert and Kim Kiyosaki.
So grateful, yeah.
If you're ready to start applying these principles in your own life, go to StockCastBonus.com right now. You'll find, again, free tools, education designed to help you to build real financial skill. Now, if this episode gave you any type of value, make sure you like it, subscribe it, share it with someone who's ready to go beyond just the books. You're not here by accident. You're building something that most people won't. So stay smart, stay invested, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Del.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.